Hi folks, this is a little bit of a part 2 or a follow-up video on the Peavey Windsor. Now, my part 1 went on for way too long as usual, half an hour of showing you one channel, and it's a great channel. It does that classic rock 70s and 80s JCM800 thing beautifully. Let you hear it quickly. Oh, like and subscribe, please. Please. Future here. Overnight I had a video posted up showing the 4-cable method, which you're now watching. However, I had a subscriber from last night commented how he would like to have seen the actual wiring of the 4-cable method. And it was a very, very valid point. So I thought I will add this in right now, and I'll do it for the Digitech, and I will also do it for my Line 6 Firehawk, which you've not seen yet. I've not used it in any videos, but I will. It's another very useful device, and like most of my things, quite budget friendly. So anyway, this is the back of my Digitech, and as you see, there's a plethora of inputs and outputs, but it's fairly straightforward to do 4-cable method. The first thing, get out the way, is your guitar cable. This is from my guitar and it goes to input. Now, there are numerous different wordings for different modelers. They all have a different way of doing things, but well, they all actually do it the same way, but they just word it slightly differently, sometimes more confusing. The Digitech has laid it out very clearly, which you can see here. Now, this is where it's confusing. You have sends and returns and returns and sends, and this is where people tend to get things a little bit mixed up. But with this one, we have the return labeled here. This is the FX return, and this goes to the amp FX send. So this is the signal coming from the amplifier, and I want it to go in there. So here we have this. So that is now connected to, if I tilt this up, there is the amplifier up there, and it is here, FX send. On some amplifiers, well, most amplifiers, the FX loop's on the back, but this one's nice and handy on the front. And then we have the effects loop return, which I have got with a little red tab. And as you see, if I swing this back round, there we go, we have a little red tab. This is your main output. So to amp effects return. That goes in like so. And there's 3 of the 4 cables, which leaves one more cable, which is the one that goes to the front of the amp. Because what this allows you to do is have things like your time-based effects. They'll all be coming from here onwards. So you kind of imagine your gains, your wah-wahs, all these kind of effects are here, compressor, and they are coming out here to amp input. So this is where you would normally just plug in your guitar. So this one goes all the way. You see the red cable at the far side? That's where that one goes. So nice and simple. And that is the 4-cable method. So the way you think about it, guitar in, and then the signal from the preamp section essentially of this, like I said, your gains, your compressors, your wah-wah, fuzzies, that comes out here. And then that signal goes into the amp, comes back out the amp here and back in. And then it runs through all the delays, some modulation effects, reverbs and the likes. And then it comes back out there and back into the power amp section of your amplifier. So that's it. And that's very straightforward. But it does have another little trick. And that is, this system also works in stereo. So say you have your, like that Peavey Windsor, and you love the sound and you want to run a stereo delay, a ping pong delay. I can plug another amp in there, and that will then run to the effects return of any other amplifier, and then you have a 5 cable method, but it's in stereo. And with this one I still have these XLR outs if I want to go into the front of house, into the desk. So that's this one, and I will now pause this and set up the line 6. So I'm back again, and here is the back of a line 6 Firehawk effects. This also applies to things like Helix or HX Stomp, or even the HD series like the HD 500s. They will all do this, and they all do it in, you know, similar ways. So just as before, the little angled one is my guitar input, and that's straightforward. Guitar in, as you would normally set it up. And we have, as you see, I've labelled them all. Effects sends. This is a stereo effects loop, so I've got even more options here, but effects send, that one is going into the front of my amp. That's your normal. If you wanted to just plug a guitar straight in, I could unplug that and plug that into the front of the amp and the other end into my guitar, and that's normal. Okay, and that leaves me with my effects send and return. Remember, the red tab is from the amp return. So this one again, red, red. And then it's a bit of a stretch into, there we go, amp send, and that's it. So it's actually exactly the same. Both systems have these ground lift options. If you ground lift there, sorry, and you set that in for amp, and that's you. Now again, if I want to run in stereo to another amp, I would again just plug in here, and straightforward. So there we go. I will try and insert this into the original video and re-upload it, and I hope that is of some use to you. Okay, I'll have another video coming up later today as well, all about speaker cabinets. Thank you, and go back to the old me. Bye bye. I'm using my Jackson SL2Q Pro, lovely guitar, neck through construction, Seymour Duncan distortions, and there's a reason I'm using the Seymour Duncan distortions. They're a very, very hot pickup. Now, this is pretty much the sound. I've got my preamp gain at about 1 o'clock, but this is the sound this amp makes. And I love that. I love how you can roll it down, even with a hot pickup like this. So you can see the stuff it does. This is great for early Van Halen era, Thin Lizzies, Iron Maidens, classic rock, proper 80s rock, 70s rock. Fantastic. But everything you see about this amp, and a load of amps, they do one thing and they do it really, really well. This doesn't have a clean sound. It doesn't have a clean channel. And if you're playing in a 70s or 80s classic rock band, that's fine. Except for maybe the few moments where you think, oh, I've got to do the intro to, pick a song, Fade to Black. I've got to do the clean bit in the middle of Master of Puppets. I've got to do something, Knocking on Heaven's Door by Guns N' Roses. I need a clean sound. this will not do it. So what I've done, I thought I'm going to do something on the 4 cable method, and using this old thing. It's a Digitech RP1000, and it is old. It's about 15 years old. So whatever this does, modern day modelers do it better. Their amp sims are better. There's no doubt about it. Even things you get now, you know, the Harley Benton ones at 150 euros, sound as good if not better than this. This wins on things like some of the delays and reverbs because they're made by Lexicon. But in terms of the amp sims, you can do much better than an old Digitech RP1000. But I thought it's a good example of letting you hear what you can do with a 1-channel, very simple amp that has a great core tone and use the effects loop. And this one has got a very conveniently placed effects loop in the front. As you see, I haven't actually plugged in the return yet because I wanted you to hear the amp. So that's just the amp, that's going into the input. So the way the 4 cable method works with this is I can set up one preset with an amp sim of something nice and clean. I've used in this case a Roland Jazz Chorus. They don't get much more clean than that. And I've also set up channel 3 to be a very high gain amp. I've based it on a 5150. And I haven't spent any time with any EQs. I've left the EQs off. I've left the noise gate off. And I've done nothing else except quickly just dial in a bit of bass, middle and treble and set the levels. So you can go and do a deep dive on any multi-effects and really tweak your sound. All I've done here is spent half an hour just getting 3 sounds and all in line. Sound number 2 is my amp, which I'll spend most of my time with. So what this allows me to do is, if I go to setting number 1, now remember, this is what this amp sounds like pretty much all the time. Number 1, if I flick this over, you'll see it says Jazz Co, because it doesn't take any more settings. This is a Roland Jazz Chorus, and I'll switch off the chorus effect. So what's happening is my guitar signal is going into the Digitech, and then it is coming from the output of the Digitech, but it's not going into this cable. It is going to go into this cable. So if there is nothing just now. Volume's up, there is nothing. Just to show you, this is going straight into the power amp. So now, all these controls are useless. They're null and void. Everything from here, 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 and here are no longer used. I can do some tone shaping using the resonance and the presence and the texture if I want. And I've still got a master volume. So what we now have is, I'll switch it to the neck pickup, we have got the cleanest, crystal clean sound. And it's just as easy for me then to press number 2 and I'm back to the amp. And that's nice. So there we go, there's a clean chorus. There's the chorus effect on. Fender Twin if I want, or a Blackface, or a Fender Bassman, or I can set it to a Soldano if I want. What I find is most modelers, I'll try and tiptoe around this a bit. Most modelers do clean tones very, very well. And they do high gain tones very, very well. But somehow they never seem to, my experience, shoot me down in the comments please, you know. My experience with whether it's Digitech or Line 6, generally what I've been using, they don't tend to get a nice crunch tone. They don't roll off quite as nicely as using an amp's crunch tone. They're getting better and better and better, and it won't be long till they're really there. But this is a one trick. If you want to sound like a crunchy Marshall tone, you get something that is a crunchy Marshall. That's a Peavey, but it does crunchy Marshall very, very well. And you can get 4 of those for the price of one JCM800. So you've got your clean tone now. I can quite happily go to whatever. You want to do your without getting copyright, and it does all that really nicely. Doesn't get any cleaner. So that's one extreme. Then I've got back to my normal amp, and here we go just with my normal amp tone. But if I want, because it's still going into a multi-effects, I can add a little bit of a delay if I want. There we go. Take the volume down, you might hear it. If I want to add a phaser into that as well. It does take a little bit away from purely the amp tone, but it's not bad. And if I wanted, I've also just put in their version of a Boss SD1. But most modelers, I'm just using this one, but any modeler will have assorted boost pedals as well. So if I just switch over to my amp sound, here we are. Switch in the built-in SD1. Does the job nicely. I'll put it back to the clean. So, just to show. Anyway, the other extreme, of course, is this does not do high gain. Not modern high gain. So, number 3. Here is a 5150. Gain set about halfway in this. Volumes is all set to match. And the EQ's just kind of quickly dialed in. Like I said, with any new modeler, more modern one, do a deep dive and you're straight into whatever you want. So that's the amp. I've maybe got it set a bit dark, but if I just pop in the tube screamer, sorry, this again is the SD1, you hear the noise increase, but clean noise increase. cheap cabinet, €300, but by using a modeler through the power amp section of this, you get a bit of that Valve analog seasoning. What this does allow me to do, of course, I did say I have a presence and resonance, so if I want to add a bit more thump to that, if I say it's a bit Marshall-y and it's not quite Peavey enough, and Peavey has got a huge amount of thump. You can do something, but you've got to make sure all your settings are in a line. It also allows me, most multi-effects will give you a wah-wah built-in and all the rest of it. But the point of this video, I suppose, is don't ever be put off by a one-channel amp that you love the core tone if it's got an effects loop. If you have an effects loop, and this will go for if it's a cheap little Peavey combo or a Marshall valve state, or not the Jet City, Soldano effects loop, the old ones, not great for this. But I can make this setting, I can put it in there, I can put it in there, I can put it in there. So if you've got a Bugera or a Peavey or anything with an effects loop, and say you love the core tone, but you need a few other flavours, I wouldn't start thinking I've got to get rid of my amp and get something that does more. Honestly, just get some kind of multi-effects. Make sure the cab sims are off and you will get close enough. And for most people gigging, you're not in a studio environment. It's like in here, I've got a little mic sat on top of the phone there. You're not going to be aware, you set a sound that works, you're not going to be too bothered. The audience certainly won't give a damn. They go, oh, it's the nice pretty clean bit, that's the rocky bit, and that's the loud squealy bit. They don't seem to really, you'll have three folk in the front that might be more interested in what you're doing. But if you're happy with your amp and you've bought your amp for a sound, but you need a few other little flavours, yeah, a modeler. This is it. It's Digitech, Line 6, Moore, Harley Benton. There's a plethora of them and they're not expensive now. And any of them that allow you to do a 4-cable method, so you need one that's got the input and the output, which they all have, and something with the send and return built into the back of the modeler, and a lot do. You just check your details and they'll do it. So there we go, just a fairly quick one, and hopefully of use. So yeah, cheap rig, still you're talking bargain prices, and then you can experiment with loads of sounds, but you still have your main core tone. And for me, I use the amp gain in the Ultra Plus, I use the amp gain in the Bugera. They've both got a beautiful clean tone. When I'm using the Jet City, I just go crunch and gain. I don't even have delays or reverbs in that. That's just as it is. It's a pure 80s rock machine. This, I have the option of having it just like the Jet City as a one sound, plug in and go rock machine with a boost in the front, or for the sake of 2 cables, this is just 2 jack cables, but they're in one little neat package. But 2 guitar leads and plug into that, plug in, so yeah, 4 cables. That's why it's It does what it says on the tin. So thank you very much. I hope this has been of some use to some of you, and I'll play you out just with a bit more of the Peavey's own sound, because I just love that sound. Thank you very much. I'll have something for you very, very soon. Bye bye.